Hey, it's Dr. Whitfield. We're going to talk about genetics today. We have a genotype, which is the actual code. The base pairings are A to T and C to G. And then our phenotypes are what we express, what we see, how we act, how those genes function really. And so I got this question out of Australia about BRCA2. And BRCA2 is a mutation. It's one of the genes can increase your risk of breast cancer. So it's tested for in families. Certainly look for genetic predisposition for cancer. And that's what it is. It's a genetic predisposition. So even if you had the genetic mutation of the BRCA2, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to develop cancer. And so that seems confusing. If you have that mutation, why wouldn't that happen? That's the whole reason to test for it. So the reason that someone with a BRCA2 mutation would not go on to develop breast cancer is called incomplete penetrance. That's when you have the gene, but you don't then go on to develop breast cancer. There's also another very, very important aspect of that equation, and that's called variable expressivity. So we have incomplete penetrance, which if we have the mutation, we don't necessarily go on to, in this case, develop cancer. And then 2, variable expressivity. So variable expressivity is probably easiest understood by looking at the Marfan's genetic mutation, and that gene is FBN1. And so in Marfan's, there can be a whole spectrum of problems. You can simply have hypermobility or looser skin, all the way up to an aortic root dissection, just because of the mutation. So just because you have a genetic sequence and a mutation within the genetic sequence doesn't mean you're going to go on to express completely that phenotype that could happen. So when I think about it and I relate it back to what I see in my practice, and I've been looking at genetics in my practice for decades now, the reason I find genetics fascinating and so important in practice is how we, from an enzyme standpoint, manage different elements. So I'm in Austin. It's been extremely cold the past several days, and the mold count in the air is very, very high. I'm incredibly sensitive to mold. That has to do with the fact that in my cells, predominantly in our liver where we detoxify, my utilization of glutathione is not as efficient as it should be. So there's a whole set of genes that govern the glutathionization pathways. So I know that I actually supplement with glutathione, and I do better with that. I also, like a lot of people, don't methylate well, and everybody knows and has heard about MTHFR at this point. But methylation are very important reactions. They put a chemical methyl group on, and specifically this used to affect me quite a bit from an energy standpoint because I don't methylate well. Utilization for me of like a plain B vitamin. So if I just took a B vitamin supplement off the rack, I would tend to not get the effect because I can't methylate well enough to then utilize that extra B vitamin for energy. So, and matter of factly, if I wouldn't take a methylated B supplement, I would definitely have lower energy levels. But because I know that, I can adjust and use a methylated B vitamin supplement. I prefer liposomals because of absorption. I just find that to be more efficient. And this is why I take issue with someone, like Gary Brecka and the 10X folks, because they would talk about the methylation genes and overemphasize their importance and not mention the others that are extremely important for detoxification. So like I mentioned, the glutathione pathway. Also, things are incredibly important for immunity. Detox is our antioxidant pathway. So SOD2 is a gene there. SOD2 is short for superoxide dismutase 2. And so when we're working out really hard, or our cells are working really hard, we produce more what's called O3, which is an oxygen-free radical. And if you don't have efficient superoxide dismutase, you have too much O3 buildup. If you do have a good superoxide dismutase function, or SOD2 function, so gene copies, it's working, then you can break that down, because basically you're just breaking it down to water by adding the hydrogen. In any event, the point is all these things work in concert, and if we don't have enough copies, or if we have a single nucleotide polymorphism, which is a base pair substitution in them, their efficiency can go down. It's not like it's absent necessarily, but it can be lower than anticipated. And so when I see patients who are suffering from and dealing with problems with chronic inflammation, and everybody knows I deal with chronic inflammation with respect to our breast implant illness cases, many of them, and we'll audit our results to release soon, but they have these single nucleotide polymorphisms, these changes. In addition, many of my patients have metabolism issues as it relates to estrogen. They produce a more toxic estrogen metabolite. It's checked in the blood. It's called estrone. So all these different things have to do with how we detoxify our hormone metabolism. And when you have these limitations, I'll have somebody have a genetic report, and we'll go over it, or the team will go over it, and really looking at their genetics and understanding allows them, it empowers them really, just like it is for me when I first looked at our reports, and or my report specifically, and it showed I did not have celiac disease, but I did have non-celiac gluten sensitivity. So what does that mean? It's like I just don't have good enzymatic activity, and it's difficult to break down gluten. So I didn't know this forever, seemingly, and the whole reason it became more and more of an issue is my daughter got sick when she was younger, and we couldn't understand what was going on with her. So ultimately, we had her tested, and she had non-celiac gluten sensitivity, and I did, and her son does as well. Anyway, the whole point is that's a real common problem. So now, even if you travel in Spain, which we do a fair amount, they'll ask you if you're celiaco, and you can say pan sin gluten, which is bread without gluten. So say for instance all I had was variable expressivity of that gene. That means I could tolerate gluten probably for a little bit, and then I would exceed my capacity enzymatically very quickly. So I don't test that. I know I really shouldn't do that, and when I eat I don't have problems with bloating, cramping, swelling, things like that. Those are all, things that are in my control. So, the genome project being completed, really from the time I was in college and med school, all sorts of things have been, changing rapidly with, the development of the internet. I went from, looking up journal articles in huge libraries and on CDs, for all you people who remember what a CD is, to being able to access the entire library of the National Library of Medicine online. If you go to National Library of Medicine or PubMed, just type in PubMed. And if you want to learn more about BRCA and its long-term outcomes as it relates to patients, I'm sure there's a study better than I could go conjure up and quote right now by looking up. You can also look up papers I published. I recently published a paper about the incidence of bacterial contamination on explant specimens. That's searchable in PubMed. I'm the first author on that. Just type in my last name, Whitfield, Whitfield, and you'll start finding papers that I've published. So, to summarize, we each get a genotype. You get that from your parents. You inherit that. And then the phenotype, or how it's expressed, is a function of, to me personally, like where we live, what we eat, what we drink, the actual exposures we get over time. So things like environmental exposures through things like heavy metals like arsenic and lead, things like mycotoxins, like I'm sensitive to mold right now, like I said, and then other environmental toxins that can be harmful that we know are carcinogenic. The things that I try to be careful of, and through examination of toxicity testing, look at parabens. So parabens used to be frequently used in cosmetic products, and we know cosmetics predominantly used by women. The application of those products to your skin can lead to absorption of those, and if you don't process them well or have limited capacity like we've been discussing, those would build up in your system and affect your hormones, your basic endocrine system. The things like herbicides, pesticides, we've talked about glyphosates, which is what's in Roundup. Those things have been incorporated, unfortunately, into our crops and gotten into the food supply. And when we ingest those, it's very hard based on your genetic capability to get all those processed through your GI tract into your liver and out. So those are just simple examples of what we talk about. Another is a phthalate, which is a plasticizer. So you always hear me talk about, don't drink out of a plastic water bottle, drink out, of stainless or glass. And it's because phthalates can actually be leached into the fluid you're drinking. So genetics play a key role in how I think about each of my prospects, clients, patients, friends, family. Goes back to my entire biology degree. It's funny, Gary Brecka is a human biologist. I have a degree in biology, a medical degree, 9 years of surgical training. 9 years of surgical training, and I have been operating. In 2026 will be 30 years. I've seen a lot change in that time, from one day doing a gallbladder surgery open with a scar to doing it with a camera, to doing modified radical mastectomies one day, and the next being converted to lumpectomy and sentinel node biopsies, introduction of all sorts of just endoscopic surgeries, and the genome project was completed. So it's been a fascinating time, and things continue to advance. Now we have artificial intelligence and Very interesting times.